What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Mid-Level Media channel, your hub for everything physical media and entertainment. I am Ken, and today, guys, I am going to be ranking my top 25 movies of the 1990s. So my good friend over at Tim Talks Talkies, he is promoting and hosting a community ranking for everybody's top 25 movies of the 1990s. Everybody that's in the physical media collecting community, if you're on Instagram or YouTube, you can send Tim your list of your top 25 movies. And what he's going to do is he's going to take everybody's list, he's going to put it together in a blender, and then he's going to do a stream at the end of the month on April the 8th. And he's basically going to take everybody's list together, and he's going to make a definitive top 25 of the 1990s, which is a pretty cool thing. He's done it with horror movies, with Christmas movies, and I am taking part in this, and I am delivering my offering today of the top 25 movies of the 1990s. And this was really hard to do, guys. This was extremely hard to do. I love the 1990s. Like, I grew up in this time period. Like, I was born in the 80s. I was born in 1985, but I really fell in love with movies in the 1990s. So I have just seen and loved so many movies in the 90s. It would have been difficult for me to do a top 50 movies in the 1990s. There's movies that I love so much with everything in me, and I had to leave it off the list, top 25. So this was very tough, guys, very tough. I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. I've got several honorable mentions that I'm getting ready to run through. But look, before we get into it, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Definitely go subscribe to Tim Talks Talkies channel. I will link that down below in the description. His Instagram, his YouTube, and everything. I think Tim's got a TikTok. I'll link that down below as well. But if you have a list that you want to send Tim, or your top 25 movies of the 1990s, do that definitely. I'll leave the Instagram down below, and you can Instagram DM him your list, or you can make a video if you have a channel as well, and definitely message him your list. As many people as we can get to take part in this, the better, to get that definitive 1990s list. But I'll tell you all right now, my list is the correct list. So look, let's get into it. Let's start with my honorable mentions. And I will say, guys, I put my 25 together, and after that, I thought of like 10 movies that I love that could have easily been in my top 25. But I thought to myself, you know, I love my top 25. I'm not going to change it, even though I discovered a couple of movies that I'm like, God, I really should have put that in there. So I just let it be, and I decided I'm going to put these movies in my honorable mentions. But look, Good Will Hunting. This is a great movie. This is probably Robin Williams' best dramatic performance, at least that I've seen. Like, he won an Oscar for this. It's a beautiful Oscar speech when he won it. Reservoir Dogs. I love this movie. I just watched it on 4K. Absolutely love it. It's a Quentin Tarantino movie. Honorable mention. I'm sorry, guys. I know there's going to be a lot of those. Can't Hardly Wait. This is probably one of my favorite party movies of all time. To me, this is better than American Pie. I love this movie. It's just one that I am super nostalgic for. I've probably seen it 50 or 60 times. And look, Mars Attacks. It's one of my favorite Tim Burton's movies. I absolutely love this film with everything in me. There's a lot of stuff in the 90s that Tim Burton did, and I'm just now realizing I don't have a lot of it over here. Mars Attacks seems to be the only one that I brought over here, but Sleepy Hollow is also a banger as well. I love that. I love Batman Returns. I'll go ahead and just call them out here, even though I don't have them. But Mars Attacks is really fun, and the cast in this movie is crazy. Demolition Man. God, I love this movie so much. This should have been in my top 25. Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes, one of my favorite action movies ever. Independence Day. I mean, I watched this movie again like 50 or 60 times growing up. I love this movie. What I will say, and the reason that this is not in my top 25, it probably would have otherwise, the sequel they put out, Resurgence, actually made my enjoyment for this film go down. Like, I watch it now and I think about Resurgence, and I'm like, I just don't appreciate this as much anymore for some reason. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. Independence Day is still great, though. I still try to watch it every 4th of July. Contact. This is a super underrated Robert Zemeckis film, and I love it. I think, again, super underrated. Matthew McConaughey, Jodie Foster put on great performances in this film, and it's a movie that I don't feel like was appreciated in its time, and I think it's gaining more of a following as we go. But Warner Brothers, please put out a 4K of this one. We need it. Gremlins 2. I really almost tried to push this into my top 25. I love Gremlins 2. I love it more than the first one, and again, a lot of people do not have that opinion, but I just love it. I love how it really takes that meta approach. It's almost a spoof of the first film, but it's still awesome. You got all kinds of new like gremlin creatures in it, and I love this movie so much. I think it's the perfect sequel. Those are my honorable mentions. Let's get into my top 25. Coming in at number 25, and I know a lot of you guys are gonna be like, huh? Are you serious right now? It 1990. This is the first horror movie that I believe I ever watched. I grew up with this film. I love this film. I like the 2017 and 2019 versions well enough. They do not hold a candle to this movie for me. I love every bit of this film. I even love the adult stuff, and nobody likes the adult stuff, but I do. I like it. I like all the actors. I like all the kid actors. I like all the adult actors. I think they all have great chemistry together. You buy into them as friends and their relationships. And I just love this movie so much. Tim Curry is Pennywise. Bill Skarsgård is great, but you cannot beat Tim Curry. He's just classic. He's so incredibly scary in this movie. And look at this steelbook. That is amazing, guys. That is amazing. That is my number 25. Coming at number 24 is one of my favorite action movies of all time. It is my favorite Nicolas Cage movie, and that is Con Air. I love Con Air so much. You got Cyrus the Virus, played by John Malkovich, who is just fantastic. Nicolas Cage plays a very different type of Nicolas Cage role, but I just think it fits him so well. Put the bunny back in the box. I just absolutely love this movie. John Malkovich is, I was going to say John Cusack. John Cusack is in this movie. A lot of Johns in this film. Steve Buscemi used to scare the crap out of me in this movie, but Con Air, it's a classic action film. It's got some good comedy in it as well. It's got some good action, and I just love it. Love everything about this movie, Con Air. It holds up. Like, I just watched it again a couple of years ago. It holds up. I love every bit of this movie. Dave Chappelle's also in the movie. Great cast. So Con Air is my number 24. You guys are probably like, geez, Ken, what is with this list? Look, I will admit 100%, a lot of this, I've got some legit like prestige films in this stack. Don't worry, guys. A lot of it's very nostalgic based as well. And I know a lot of you guys are going to be scratching your head about this next one. My number 23, I got to flip this a little bit, is Back to the Future Part 3. I love Back to the Future Part 3. I think it's super slept on. It's super underrated in the franchise. If I were to rank them today, now when I was a kid, I would go second one would be first, the first one would be second, and then this would be dead last. Today, I would go first one, number one. The third one is my number 2, and my third favorite is the second one at this point. I love them all, love every one of them, but I really appreciate this one. What I really like about this movie, I love Mad Dog Tannen as well. Nobody calls me Mad Dog, nobody. But what I love about this film the most is Christopher Lloyd, Doc Brown, actually gets a story. Like, he actually gets something to do, whereas in the other movies, he just feels like a side character and kind of unimportant, other than he's the guy that created the time machine. In this movie, he actually gets a story, he gets a love interest, and I like that he's kind of the focal point of this film. And Marty McFly is still a big part of the movie, don't get me wrong, but Christopher Lloyd, I feel like, is more the focal point and the star of the film. And I love that they ended the trilogy like that. And I think it's a great movie. Again, another line that I love from that movie is when Michael J. Fox goes up and he asks for water at the bar. And he goes, "Water? You want water? Go ahead out there and stick your head in the horse trough. In here, we drink whiskey." I love it. Anyway, God, I need to get scooting, guys. What am I at? Number 22, The Faculty. One of my favorite teen horror movies of all time. I mean, what can you say about The Faculty? It's it's that post-Scream era type of horror. It's got that kind of cool, slick teenage, it's got some cool, slick dialogue to it. You got a cool, sexy cast here. Josh Hartnett, Jordana Brewster, Elijah Wood. You got freaking Usher in this movie. Come on. But I love it so much. It's a take on the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, storyline, but it also adds a unique flavor and twist to it. You also got the T-1000 in this movie, Robert Patrick, who is freaking awesome as well. But The Faculty is one of my favorite 90s horror films like ever. So I had to include that in the list. Number 22. Number 21 is a movie that won Best Picture, guys. I told you I would have some prestige films in this top 25, and that is American Beauty. Now, you may think it's controversial. It's got Kevin Spacey in it, but Kevin Spacey better than that. He sucks now. But look, I'm not going to give up watching Kevin Spacey movies. He was in a lot of really good movies, including, another one that may be on here, but maybe it's not. I don't know. American Beauty is a fantastic movie. It's very dark, but it's also kind of comedic at the same time. And I don't know, the movie definitely doesn't make me feel good when I watch it, but I'm just so captivated by everybody in this film and their performance. And the ending, again, is extremely dark, and it doesn't leave you on a happy note, but it's still such a great story and such a great film by Sam Mendes. I think he did a great job directing this. And again, it won Best Picture for a reason. It's a great movie. In a year like 1999, so many great movies, this won Best Picture. So just think about that. American Beauty. Apollo 13 comes in at my number 20. And I think that's a good spot for Apollo 13. Admittedly, I have not rewatched this movie in probably 15 years. So I think of all these movies that are in my stack, I think this is the one that I haven't watched, the longest amount of time. But I remember watching this film so vividly. Like, this was one I loved watching all the time when I was a kid. So I've seen this movie probably as much as I've seen another Tom Hanks movie that we're going to talk about in this stack. I used to watch them both all the time. This is where I really fell in love with Tom Hanks as an actor, was with this movie, and another one we'll talk about here in a second. But this is such a great cast. I mean, Kevin Bacon's in this movie. How can you not love a movie with Kevin Bacon, Gary Sinise, and then you got Bill Paxton. How did I forget Bill Paxton was in this movie until I just looked on the back? Directed by Ron Howard. It's such a great movie. It's based on a true story, obviously. So those always add a little bit extra emotional weight to them. And I really enjoy Braveheart. Don't get me wrong, but this should have won Best Picture over Braveheart. It really should have. I love Apollo 13. That's my number 20. Coming in at my number 19 is a classic action film directed by Michael Bay. Could be a number of things, guys. It's Bad Boys, though. This movie, if you've been following the channel for any length of time, you know how I feel about Bad Boys. I love this franchise. I don't love the second one, but I love this one, and I love the newest one they came out with. But this is the one that I, again, watched on repeat over and over again. I thought it was insanely hilarious, but also the action's so good, and just the characters are so great. Like Martin Lawrence and Will Smith are so great together in this movie. Their chemistry, like the opening of the film, always had me laughing my ass off when I was a kid. I love it so much. Bad Boys is an absolute banger, and it looks great on 4K as well. And to be honest, I think it's Michael Bay's best movie. I think it's his best movie. That's my number 19. Coming in at my number 18, guys, this is a movie, another Best Picture winner. See, I'm bringing the heat with the Best Picture winners here. I think I've got a couple more in here. Silence of the Lambs. How can you talk about the 90s and not talk about one of the greatest horror films ever made with Silence of the Lambs? In fact, I don't know how this is number 18 on my list. Like, it should honestly be a little bit higher, but this is where it is in the stack. So Silence of the Lambs, two of the greatest movie villains of all time, with Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal and Buffalo Bill. It's so crazy to me how a movie could have two of the greatest horror villains ever in the same movie. Then you got Jodie Foster as Clarice, who's just fantastic in this movie. Beautiful direction by Jonathan Demme. And horror has a very tough time transcending the genre to get into Oscar level categories. And your movie has to be good to make it to the Oscars. And Silence of the Lambs not only made it to the Oscars, but it won Best Picture. For everybody that says this movie's not a horror movie, screw you. It absolutely is. It is a thriller. It's a thriller, but it is a horror movie. Like I said, two of the most iconic horror icons are in this movie. Anthony Hopkins bites a guy's face off. If that's not horror, like, I don't know what is. Silence of the Lambs is a horror movie, guys. I hate to break it to you, but it is. That's my number 18. Coming in at number 17 is a classic Steven Spielberg movie from 1991, and that is Hook, starring Robin Williams. I love Hook so much, and I know I've been saying that about everything, and you'll probably continue to hear it as I go, but this is one of my favorite Steven Spielberg movies. I don't get the hate that this movie gets. Like I said, I grew up with this film, so I just love it. Rufio. The whole like imaginary food fight that they have at the table. It's just, I love everything about it. I think that Robin Williams is just great as Peter Pan. I love his arc in the film, how he goes from kind of businessman, father, and has to kind of refine his childhood in Neverland and save his son. And I just love Dustin Hoffman as Hook as well. Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell. Like, how can you beat this movie? This is the greatest adaptation or story, Peter Pan story, that there is, in my opinion. I think this is the definitive, even though it's not a traditional Peter Pan story, I think this is the best Peter Pan adaptation that there is. So Hook is phenomenal. If you haven't seen it, if you heard people shit on it, say bad things about it, don't listen to them. Watch Hook. It's one of the greatest adventure movies ever made. So that's my number 17. Coming in at number 16, guys, is a movie that I think honestly should have been nominated for Best Picture. It's one of my favorite horror movies ever made, Candyman. I think that people sleep on this movie for sure as far as like one of great horror movies, because everybody talks about The Exorcist. I do. I know. I love The Exorcist. I love The Shining. I love Poltergeist. I love all those movies. This is up there to me with all of those as far as like classic horror status, and it doesn't get talked about and it doesn't get appreciated enough. So I wanted to put it on this list because it's one of my personal favorite horror movies ever made. Tony Todd is just so iconic as the character of Candyman in this movie. It's got some great, it's scary. Like this movie, like a lot of horror movies I'll watch and I'll be like, maybe I was scared when I was a kid of that movie. It doesn't really scare me anymore. There's still a very creepy atmosphere to this movie and you still get scared. I still get scared when I watch this film and Candyman first appears and starts ripping people's guts out with his hook. It's great. Candyman's phenomenal. It's a great horror movie. That is my number 16. All right, so where are we at now? We're at my top 15, guys. Let's kick things off with Pulp Fiction. I love Pulp Fiction. It is my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie as of right now. If you ask me tomorrow, it might be Kill Bill. But it's definitely my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie of the 90s. Just rewatched it on 4K. It looked excellent and it still holds up. The only thing that holds this one back for me, it's still a masterpiece in my opinion across the board. One of the greatest movies ever made. One of the smartest scripts ever written by Quentin Tarantino. I just don't love the Bruce Willis stuff. That's the only thing. And again, I know people will push back on that. But Pulp Fiction, it's a banger. It really speaks for itself. I love Pulp Fiction. That's my number 15. I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to gasp at my next pick. Look, guys, coming in at number 14 is Jurassic Park. And I'm sure a lot of people would have this in their top 10. And look, I wanted to put it in my top 10. I really did. But when I really broke it down, I was like, there's just other movies. There's movies that I've watched recently that just, I really feel like they're masterpieces. And there's just other movies that I have such a deep nostalgia for. I have deep nostalgia for this too. Like I watched this movie so many times when I was a kid. Watched this movie in the theaters. I think that it's a great movie. It's certainly a great movie, but I think that it more or less has great moments than an actual like great movie overall, if that makes any sense. I think that the T-Rex bursting out of the fence, that whole sequence, is maybe a top 5 cinematic movie moment of all time. Such a great moment. And there's so many great moments all over this movie. And look, it's a great movie, guys. I'm not trying to downplay Jurassic Park. It is my number 14 of the 1990s. I obviously love the movie. I just don't think, I enjoy The Lost World more, to be honest, like as an actual movie. I don't think that it is as good as some people would make it out to be, if that makes any sense. But it's still my number 14. I love Jurassic Park. Just felt like I had to explain myself that it wasn't in my top 5 or something. Coming in at number 13 is honestly a movie I should have had in my top 10. But God, I got so many great movies in my top 10. But this is probably my favorite action movie of all time. And that is Speed with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. I love Speed. I know everybody loves Die Hard. Everybody loves Die Hard. And I know Die Hard was in the 80s, so I couldn't have picked that one anyway. I pick Speed every single day of the week over Die Hard. Like this is Die Hard on a bus. But this one is so much more exciting to me. It's so much more thrilling. I just love all of these set pieces throughout the movie. You know, you had the elevator at the beginning, you had the bus in the middle, and then you had the subway at the end. So there's all kinds of great set piece moments. There's all kinds of great set pieces just involving the bus throughout the movie. Sandra Bullock and Keanu are just the perfect action duo together in this film. And Dennis Hopper is an amazing villain. I love it. I love it. Pop quiz, hot shot. And then you got Jeff Daniels is great in this movie as well. Everybody's great in this movie. I think this is the best action movie ever made. Fight me on that. Is there anything better than Speed? Let me know in the comment section below. That's my number 13. All right, guys. Look, I'm filming this very late at night, so I'm getting a little delirious here. So this top 12 should be fun. Coming in at number, is that where I'm at? Coming in at number 12 is a classic. It is an all-time classic. It's not Tom Hanks' best movie. Okay, we'll get to that a little bit later. but it is one of my favorite Tom Hanks movies for sure. It is a classic movie from 1994. It won Best Picture, guys. Look, I've got some real Best Picture heat in this stack today. Forrest Gump. That's right. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. Lieutenant Dan. I drank me about 15 Dr. Peppers. This movie is endlessly quotable. I love the story of Forrest Gump. It's a fictional character set in a real world with real like historical events happening around Forrest. It's such a smart story. I'm pretty sure it's based on a novel. But this was a huge movie. Like, people that grew up in the 90s will remember how big Forrest Gump was. Like, it was a part of the pop culture zeitgeist. Like, everybody knew who Forrest was and knew who Forrest Gump was. And then this movie won Best Picture. So it was both the most popular movie that came out that year, and it also won Best Picture. So I just miss those days where the popular movies could also win Best Picture. But Forrest Gump, look, I shouldn't have to explain Forrest Gump. It's my number 12. It's a great movie. Everybody knows it's a great movie. Liar Liar is coming in at number 11. This is one of my favorite comedies of all time. It is my favorite Jim Carrey movie. I think that it's the perfect blend of Jim Carrey's like more his comedic side and his more dramatic, serious side. That definitely shines through in this movie. And again, it's another super quotable movie. The pen is blue, the pen is blue, the goddamn pen is blue. The claw. Rah, rah. The claw's coming at you. Ooh, you're scared of the claw. You're scared of the claw. I just love it. Love Cary Elwes in this movie. He's super underrated in Liar Liar. He's just so good with the comedy and the comedic timing with Jim Carrey. They're so great together. But yeah, I love Liar Liar. One of my favorite comedies. Again, I reviewed this on the channel like a year ago when this Shout Select release came out. You guys know I love the movie. Coming in at my number 11. Now let's get into my number 10, guys. I'm kind of surprised this one's my number 10, but I do love this movie, and that is From Dusk Till Dawn. This is one of the greatest horror movies of the 90s for sure. If you want to call it that, it's definitely part thriller, part horror. It has such a twist in it. And this was written by Quentin Tarantino, directed by Robert Rodriguez. So I guess you could say that this is my favorite Tarantino movie of the 90s because you got Quentin Tarantino in it and he wrote the movie. But it's such a good movie. And George Clooney in this film, it's probably my favorite George Clooney performance. He's such a badass in this film. Harvey Keitel in this film, who's fantastic, but Selma Hayek, the Selma Hayek performance in this film, come on guys, are you with me? Selma Hayek in From Dusk Till Dawn was just perfection. Absolutely love From Dusk Till Dawn. It's easily my favorite vampire movie. I love it so much. And that's coming in at my number 10. All right, coming in at number 9, guys, is I'm getting ready to bring it, guys. I'm getting ready to bring the heat into my number 9. So I only recently fell in love with this movie, but this is such a great movie. Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, just giving some of the best performances of their entire career. Just watched this again with the 4K, and I loved every single minute of it. But Heat's an all-time classic, directed by Michael Mann. That comes in at my number 9. Coming in at my number 8, guys, is one of my favorite comedies of all time. This one came out in 1999, and that is Office Space. I love Office Space. I find this to be one of the most rewatchable movies ever. I find myself, this was on Netflix for a while. It was on one of the streaming services, but like if I want to go to sleep to like a movie, I put on Office Space for some reason. Like every single time, it just calms me. It makes me want to fall asleep. Not in a bad way. It's not boring, but it's just a calming feeling to put on this comfort food of a movie and just fall asleep to it. So I absolutely love Office Space. One of my favorite comedies of all time. Michael Bolton, that's your real name. There's so many great quotes in this movie, with the scene with the fax machine, I got to drive down to Los Colitas. I'm doing the drywall at the new McDonald's. I love it. Endlessly quotable. It's so good. And I watched this movie when I was a teenager, so I hadn't really gotten into like the whole work life thing yet. But it's so relatable, like as an adult watching this film, and just how it portrays like the just humdrum like daily life of going to work every day and just going home, and how soul sucking that can actually be. Like it just portrays that so well. And it's like when you're a kid, you're like, hey, God, is it really that bad when you're working? And then at my age, it's like, yeah, it kind of is. So Office Space is incredibly relatable at this point in my life for sure. All right, we got 7 left. Sorry guys, I keep losing my place. Unforgiven is coming in at my number 7. Just watched this for the first time a year and a half ago. I love this movie. I was so taken by it. Clint Eastwood is so good in this film. Gene Hackman is one of the best villains I've ever seen in any movie. Morgan Freeman is spectacular in this film. Everybody's great, but the final like 20 minutes of this movie just had me floored and stunned and just on the edge of my seat. And I loved everything about Unforgiven. Such a great movie. Also won Best Picture, directed by Clint Eastwood. Such a great movie. It's definitely a classic for a reason. I slept on that one for far too long. Coming in at my number 6 is a movie that should have honestly won Best Picture in 1997. Like, I love Titanic. You know, everybody loves Titanic. But spoiler alert, Titanic is not on my list. This movie from 1997 is, though, and that is Copland. This, to me, is James Mangold out Scorsese, in my opinion. Like, he makes a movie that, to me, is better than Casino. It's better than Goodfellas. I don't have those on the list. I have Copland on the list. I love Copland. It's such a captivating crime thriller with a great cast. It has all the Scorsese hallmarks in it. You got Robert De Niro, you got Ray Liotta in this film, you got Harvey Keitel, but you add in Stallone. Given what I love Rocky, guys. You guys know how much I love Rocky. I've reviewed the Rockies recently. I love them. You guys know that. This is his best performance, I think, of his entire career. I love his character in this movie. It's so good. And this was at a point in Stallone's career where it was really starting to die. Like, he just wasn't getting the roles that he used to. And, you know, this was probably one of his last great performances before his career kind of went straight to DVD. And then he, of course, came back with Rocky Balboa. And it's so good. I think he's so underrated as an actual dramatic actor. Like, he wasn't given enough of those type of roles. I think after this movie, he should have done like 10 movies like this where he really got to showcase that great acting because he's just so good in this movie. But Copland, I love. That's my number 6. Now getting into my top 5, guys. We're getting in some real good stuff here. Coming in at my number 5 is The Green Mile. And I recently did a top 5 ranking of Stephen King adaptations over on Nick at Movie Impulse channel. And this was my number 1 Stephen King adaptation. I love this movie. I've seen it twice in the past couple of years. I'd never seen this movie growing up. I always watched Shawshank. I never checked out The Green Mile. In my opinion, The Green Mile, sorry to spoil the rest of my list, is better than Shawshank Redemption. It's the best Frank Darabont movie. By the way, Shawshank Redemption should have been in my honorable mentions. I love that movie. But this one's so good. This is Tom Hanks' best performance, in my opinion. I love him in this film. I love Michael Clark Duncan. Everybody that's in this movie is great. It's such a great story. It's 3 hours long, but it flies by, in my opinion. It does not drag. I just get so caught up in the story and the characters and just every single moment of this movie I savor. I love it so much. And the ending just hits you so hard. Everybody's so good. I'm in tears by the time I get to the end of this movie. It has such an emotional impact on me. So coming at number 5 is The Green Mile. Such a great movie. All right, guys, we're getting in some bangers here. Twister is my number 4. I love Twister. And look, guys, my top 4 is going to be a lot of nostalgia. A lot of nostalgia in my top 4. These are movies I've been watching since I was a kid. I got the VHS tape of Twister. That was the first movie I remember getting on VHS that I waited and was so excited to get. I got it for my birthday. And Twister was a huge movie for me. I was deathly afraid of tornadoes when I was a kid. And Twister almost cured my fear of them. After I watched this movie, I wanted to be Bill Paxton. He was my hero. Forget Spider-Man, Superman, Batman. Bill Paxton, the Storm Chaser, was my hero after watching this film. I loved him in it so much. I loved everything about this movie. Just the way it portrays tornadoes was incredibly realistic to me at the time. I had never really seen a tornado, but it looked like all the footage that you would see on TV. And I think that today, I don't think Twister gets enough credit for the special effects, because when you watch this today, it still looks great. It still looks phenomenal. When you watch it on Blu-ray or on streaming or whatever, it needs a 4K immediately, but the Twister special effects in this movie were top notch. I don't think it gets enough credit. This is my favorite disaster movie ever made, hands down. Love Twister. That's my number 4. Getting into my top 3, guys. I love this movie. This is my favorite Robin Williams film by far, and it's not even close. This movie just means so much to me. Mrs. Doubtfire is one of my favorite comedies of all time, one of my favorite family movies of all time. I love it so much. It's so rewatchable. This is one I watched over and over and over again. Toodaloo! It's a drive-by fluting. I love everything about this film. You watch it, and it's one of those movies, you see it on, you're gonna watch the entire thing. It's just so amazing from start to finish. It's so funny, but also very dramatic. You feel a lot of the emotional moments as well that he had to go through as a father. It's such a well-told story, well-directed movie. All the performances are great. Sally Field is great in this film. Pierce Brosnan, I love him in this movie because you're supposed to hate him, but he's so incredibly charming and charismatic because he's Pierce Brosnan. And he's also a likable character. Like, he's a good guy, but you're supposed to hate him because he's opposing Robin Williams, and Robin Williams makes you hate him in the movie. But I love Mrs. Doubtfire. It's one of the greatest movies ever made, in my opinion. That's my number 3. But this is my favorite comedy ever made, and that is Wayne's World. And I've seen Wayne's World more times than I can even think to count. I've probably seen this movie 150 times, but I got this awesome steelbook right here. And this is the VHS tape that I watched as a kid. This is the same VHS tape that I watched when I was a kid. Again, so quotable. It was so ahead of its time as well. Like, this really played into the meta. It broke the fourth wall. Not a lot of movies around this time were doing stuff like this, and the things that this movie does is incredibly innovative. Like, Deadpool owes everything to Wayne's World. It's just classic. Mike Myers, Dana Carvey as Wayne and Garth. You just don't get any more iconic as a comedy duo to me. And it's just such a cool movie that ages incredibly well. Like, the comedy in this movie, everything still resonates today. Like, the idea of like getting too big and selling out, all of that stuff is still very relevant today. So Wayne's World is one of the greatest comedies ever made. It is my personal favorite comedy ever made. And that comes in at my number 2 favorite movie of the 1990s. So look, guys, I've covered a lot of great movies. What could possibly be my number 1 that I haven't already talked about? Well, there is one movie. There is one movie I haven't talked about, and a lot of people will back me up with this one. I can almost guarantee it, that this movie is going to end up on at least 95% of people's top 25 movies of the 1990s. It is a classic science fiction action film. A lot of people would say it's their favorite action movie ever made. I probably would as well. Again, I said Speed was my favorite action movie, but I'll say this is my favorite science fiction action movie ever made. Have you guys figured it out yet? It's got Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. It's got Linda Hamilton. It's got Robert Patrick. It's got Edward Furlong. It is Terminator 2. Judgment Day. Are you kidding me right now? What movie is better than Terminator 2? Come on now. This is a movie, again, I grew up with. I watched this movie so many times on VHS tape. I watched pre-recordings of this movie. I watched it on TV. Anytime I had the chance to watch this film, I watched it on Laserdisc. I watched it on DVD. I watched it on Blu-ray. I have yet to watch it on 4K, actually, which is kind of interesting. I own 2 copies of the 4K. Haven't watched it yet. I've seen it on streaming. I've seen this movie so many times. So many times. It is so deeply embedded in me. Again, another one of those movies that if you see it on, you gotta keep watching it. There's so many cool parts of this movie. This is definitely, a lot of people talk about the movies that made them fall in love with movies. This is one of those movies. Like, if I had to point to 3 movies that made me fall in love with movies, this would be on that list. So I have to include this on the 90s list at my number 1 spot because it's so incredibly important and influential to me as a movie lover today. But what can you say about Terminator 2? It's great. Like, can anybody dispute that? One of the greatest, most well-paced action films ever made, directed by the legendary, great James Cameron. Terminator 2. This is James Cameron's best movie of the 1990s. It's not Titanic. And as much as I love it, it's not True Lies. It is Terminator 2 Judgment Day, starring the great Arnold Schwarzenegger. And look, everybody talks about this movie for a reason. Everybody has this at the top of their list for a reason. It's because it's so great. So Terminator 2 is my number 1, guys. Look, that was difficult for me to get through because, as you guys know, I like to talk a lot about the movies. I just feel like if I'm going to make a list like this, like I got to talk about this stuff. I got to explain why these movies are so important to me and why they are in these specific slots that they're in. So, but anyway, that's my top 25 of the 1990s. Thank you so much, Tim, for hosting this event and, you know, having us all take part in it. Like I said, I will leave Tim's links down below if you want to contact him on Instagram. Do that. Send him your top 25 list of the 1990s. Also, check out Tim's YouTube channel. I'll link that down below as well. I will actually be a part of that stream on April the 8th where we go through all the top 25 1990s movies, the community list, everybody's list put together. So that should definitely be a fun time. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know some of your favorite 90s films in the comment section below for sure. Let me know what you think of my list. I'm sure you've got some thoughts. Let me know in that comment section below. Turn on those bell notifications. Follow me on all my social media accounts, and we'll see you next time.